2004. Rockstar Games had just released a trilogy of games that took the world by storm. Of course, I'm talking about the GTA series. Games that, let's be honest, kinda set trends for its innovation it did for open world games in a 3D environment, which was still fairly new if we remember, because technology was evolving a lot back then. Not only that, these games paid tribute to pop culture, whether it was in the New York mafia scene, or the Miami drug scene, or even the LA gang scene. Because Rockstar created a fun and rich world for the player to explore, it was inevitable for other companies to try and copy and take their own spin on some of the worlds Rockstar was inspired by. It was more noticeable when San Andreas came out, because when San Andreas came out, it seems like every company wanted a piece of the action. And as you start to see games with an urban setting, even if they're not even sandboxes, you clearly could see that they were trying to get that success. Granted, another factor was that hip-hop was becoming a more popular genre throughout the year. Which, speaking of,
yeah, man. Which one of these cars you gonna use?
In the music world, after his success in the 90s during his time in labels like Death Row Records and Low Limit Records, Snoop Dogg was signed to Star Trek Records and released his 7th album in 2004 with his hit single Drop It Like It Hot, which still gets airways to this day. Meanwhile, in the movie world, South Central native movie director John Singleton was becoming a famed movie director in the industry for films like Boys in the Hood, Poetic Justice, and even Hollywood action films like Too Fast and Too Furious. So much so, he even got his own star. Now, you're asking why am I bringing all this up? Because back in 2004, a little bit after San Andreas was released, a company named Midway, which y'all should know from Mortal Kombat fame, decided to announce a game in September 2004 titled Fear and Respect. Now this project was interesting because it was going to be a game with Midway, Snoop, and John Singleton as the director. And this was furthermore shown in this little clip.
Move in the video games by directing this mind-blowing new game that I'm starring in. You know, and Midway Games is letting me give you an exclusive preview of it right now. Didn't I tell you Spike TV had the mad hookups? Now, you about to see something that you'll never see nowhere else. So people, please give it up for my friend, my dog, my director, John Singleton.
Hey, what's up? Tonight I'm here to talk to you about a new video game I wrote and directed. It's a cutting-edge third-person action game that realistically depicts life in South Central. And it stars my man, Snoop Dogg. So now, for the first time anywhere, let's take a look at our brand new game, Fear and Respect.
A quick backstory. Singleton had been pitching companies about a video game for a while, as he was a fan of video games since the Atari days. Seeing how storytelling in video games has evolved a lot to the point it can replicate a Hollywood movie, Singleton wanted to do that with his style of storytelling. Thus, he brought Snoop Dogg along, and voila, Fear and Respect was born. The concept of this game was interesting. As many sources mentioned it, it's a third-person shooter in an open-world game like GTA. However, in Game Informer issue 141, Scott Lane, who was the executive producer for the game, has claimed it's not an open-world game. It's a linear design game with levels. What's interesting though is that later in the interview, Lane describes the level being a sandbox, meaning the levels will allow you to walk around, do side quests, interact with the NPCs, and of course fight off gangbangers. The gameplay was interesting. The gunplay was going to be like RE4, meaning when you draw your gun, it'll zoom in, and this would also happen when you were using your fists as well. You will be able to run a gun like Max Payne and have the ability to duck and cover. When it comes to the gunfights, the environment was also interactable. So like say if you saw your enemy through a window, you can shoot that window. What was more eye-catching in my opinion was the idea of interacting with the NPCs. See, the NPCs will react differently depending on your fear and respect meter. So think of it like kind of like your clout meter. So depending how your clout is, if it was low, you will have like a bunch of people attacking you. If it was high, you'll have people running away from you. Basically, whatever action or choices you do in the game will lead to some type of consequences. So much so, there was going to be 3 different endings depending on the meter. Now what about the story? Well, you play as Goldie, played by Snoop, who just finished doing a bid and tries to live a quiet life in his gang-infested home. He can no longer get in trouble with the law due to him being in his last strike. Unfortunately, someone wants him dead, and because of that, it slowly leads him to go back to his criminal ways. Pretty cool, right? But what happened? How come we haven't heard of it since then? Fear and Respect got cancelled in March 2nd of 2006. While we never got a reason why it got cancelled, many have said it was because of the market, especially since Saints Row was around the corner. However, another possibility is that Midway had a weird run in the 2000s. They were ambitious by releasing a lot of games, like a lot of them are close to each other's, like release date wise. However, some of those ambitious games did cost them when the sales weren't doing any good. And thus they declared bankruptcy, and then many of the properties went to Warner Bros. As Midway recovered losses and canceled Fear and Respect, what about Snoop and Singleton? As we know, Snoop continued having a very successful career and would literally do anything for a paycheck, and even recovered Death Row Records as of recent. As for John Singleton, he continued his career in Hollywood by directing, writing, and producing movies and TV shows. Unfortunately, on April 28th of 2019, Singleton passed away due to a stroke he suffered earlier that month. That being said, he left a great legacy in the entertainment world by showing the world the life and struggle living in South Central or South LA through the cinematic lens. Even though Fear and Respect was cancelled, there has been various media that was inspired by his works. Speaking of, when Snoop was asked about the game, this is what he had to say recently.
We had sat down and we had really put together a real story that was like a motion picture, but a few things that got dropped behind the wall as far as the people video game early didn't really understand what we was trying to do. So it got dropped, but I think it was a great idea and it should be revisited in the memory of John Singleton.
Will we ever see a revival? Only time will tell.
Game over, yeah!
My name is Kobe and I thank you for watching this.